The setting screen of an app is potentially the most boring screen of an app. It's not one that people think about a lot, but for a lot of people who like to customize things and kind of dig into all the little details, setting screen can be kind of fun. And it's been on my list for a while to redesign the sofa setting screen. The previous one or the current one, depending on which version you're using, was kind of like almost like a marketing page in a way. The previous design really wasn't scaling very well as I wanted to add more stuff to it. And it was built with some older iOS technology. So I wanted to finally get a fresh start with the setting screen, add some more customization and power for people, and kind of just give it, a facelift. So that's out now. So in Sofa 3.4.2, you can now see all of this stuff. So if you don't have it yet, you can go download it. The link is in the description. What I'm going to do in this video is just give you a very quick overview of most of the new stuff that is new and how it all works. So now, if we look at the app here, if I tap on this little more button at the top, we have settings. And now we can see the brand new settings screen. Isn't it beautiful? It's just yum. So as you can see, this is very simple, very straightforward, and things are broken down into a few different categories, and I'll dive into things. So we just have general stuff, things around themes, support, and some of these will just link out to the website for support documentation or to join the community stuff, which you can see the Discord server or see us on Mastodon, that kind of thing. You can now see the status of iCloud syncing. Sometimes iCloud just acts weird, and being able to see the current status, if there's an error, that kind of stuff is very helpful. So that's in there as well. And the rest is kind of the more legal stuff. So you can get into that if you want. You can see the privacy policy. Let's dive into probably the beefiest part, which is the Fiddly Things. So there's a lot going on in Fiddly Things. And basically the idea here is there's various parts of the app that you may want to customize to fit more how you use it specifically. And this is starting to give you options for that kind of stuff. So for example, quirky mode. The design of Sofa in some ways can be labeled as quirky, and I do that intentionally. And for the most part, that's good, but sometimes it can be kind of annoying that is happening. So for example, sticky notes is an area where people have asked for some other options for that design. So if I actually turn this on, which is the default, if I go back and I look at a sticky note, you'll see that the sticky note actually displays on top of the actual cover image. Now, I personally like that. I treat it as like a physical object where I'm literally putting a sticky note over this thing because I want to remember a specific note or who recommended it. And I think it's quirky and it adds a lot of fun to the UI. But one of the problems is that it covers the image. And for some people, that's just super annoying. So they wanted an option where they could still use sticky notes, but respect the cover images and not put things over top of them. So now if we go back into our settings, now if we turn this off and we go look at sticky notes, you'll see that sticky notes now are just kind of in line there. So you can see where it used to cover the artwork, and now it's just kind of in line underneath of the metadata for whatever you've added. And what's nice is this setting kind of respects a sticky note throughout the whole experience in the app. So if you tap on this and you want to see a specific detail, you can see that the sticky note again does not cover any of the artwork here. It's literally listed right here, and you can tap on that and see more details. So that's what quirky mode does. Right now it's just sticky notes, but I have ideas for different things where the UI will potentially be more playful, and just giving people an option where they may not want a very playful experience. They may want something that's a little more streamlined. So the next setting is around data types and which ones are shown and not shown. And by default, there's a lot of different types of data that you can add to Sofa. And so if I tap the plus button here, you can see apps, books, movies, video games, all of those things. Now, there may be people who use the app who maybe they only use movies and video games and they don't care about everything else. But every time they open this menu, they're seeing podcasts or they're seeing board games, whatever that is. And that's kind of annoying. So what you can now do is you can turn those off. So the data types that you don't use or don't care to use. So if I want, I can turn off, say, audiobooks, board games, and say music albums. So now when I go back and I want to add something, I have a much smaller menu for only the things that I want to see. Now, this won't impact any data you already have saved. So let's say that you have a bunch of apps saved, but then you've turned off apps in this menu. All your apps data is still saved. You'll still be able to see it, see all the details moving around, that kind of stuff. You just won't be able to add new apps unless you go and turn that toggle back on. Now, this next set of settings is for the kind of main parts of the app. So you have the pile, the shelf, and activity. And there's very similar settings here, and activity has a few extra ones. You now have the option to choose the shape of items for different parts of the app. So in different lists, in the pile, and activity, that kind of thing. And by default, if we look at this, there's 4 options here. So you have short, square, medium, and tall. And the idea here is, before I never offered this option, if you think, Sofa has a lot of different types of media that you can add to it. So a movie cover and a book cover are roughly the same shape and size. But a video game cover is a little bit different. Music album and podcast are square. App icons are square. So there's a lot of different shapes. And what I've done up until this point is I just have kind of this generic, it's not really a square, it's not like a full rectangle, it's something kind of in the middle. And that works most of the time, but you're not able to see the full cover art in a lot of situations. So this is giving a lot more customization to different parts of the app depending on the type of data that's in there. So again, you have short, square, medium, and tall, and they're good for various different types of data. And you can choose that for both the pile, the shelf, activity, and you can choose it for lists as well, and I'll get to that in a second. You also have the option to choose the sort order for the pile and the shelf, so that's there. And then with activity, you can choose the default year for the stats filter that's in there. So, and stats are on if you have Super Sofa. So to give you an example here, let's say that I go to activity. Now by default, when I go to activity, all years are selected. So this will literally show me all of my data here. So I can see that. And I can filter by the different types of data that are there. Now, what I can do is, instead of defaulting that to all years and showing me everything, I can say, just show me the latest year. So if the latest year is 2022, it'll show me 2022 by default, or now we're in 2023. So if I go back here and I do activity, 2023 is the default option here. So I can basically just track the current year that I am logging stuff, whether that's movies, books, video games, all those things. And as you can see, I haven't tracked much because I've been building this thing. You know, that happens. But you can still change it. You can still go back to all years. You can still choose specific years, whatever you want to do. But again, you can change that default. That's definitely an in the weeds little setting, but should be helpful for some people. Now, the next set of settings is for when you are creating the list. And basically all of these settings here are you are kind of setting your own default settings for when you create new lists. So for example, whenever you create a new list, if you want every new list to show a cover image, to show a title and a description, and say you want every new list to be a relaxed list layout, and then you can also choose the shape of items as well. And you can choose a sort order, you can choose the logged activity setting, all that stuff. So again, if you're someone who is about to create a few lists and you don't want to change the settings of each list after you've made them, you can kind of set all that stuff here, set up everything here, and then once you create a new list, it'll use these settings that you have created. Let's say you already have a bunch of lists and you want to update all of those lists to have the same settings for all of them. Same layout, same sort, same log to activity, all that stuff. You can do that, and that's what this toggle does here, this override all list settings. So basically, all the settings that you've set here for this list section, if you turn this on, you get a little confirmation, and then this will literally override all of your current list settings for all of your lists to use whatever you've configured right here. So use that wisely. And then lastly, this reset settings. This is simply any settings that you've changed here on this entire Fiddly settings page. If you tap this, this will reset all of them to the default in case you just want to go back to the kind of stock setup of the app. So that's all the Fiddly settings stuff. And as you're going through the app, there are specific things you can change as you go through it. So if I go into the pile, I can also change the item shape here, and I can show you. So I can make these all tall, and you can see that, which is very nice. And this is really great for like movie posters, TV covers, books, that kind of stuff. And I can change that also for activity. I can change that for the shelf. And then if we go into a specific list and you edit those list details, you'll see all of those list settings, but specifically for this list. Because again, you can customize all the list settings per list if you want. Themes got cleaned up and reorganized a little bit. And then there's a new way where you can see all of the alternate app icons, and you can choose which one that you want. VHS is that's probably my favorite. There's a lot of good ones in here, but if you are into alternate app icons, there you go. Choose them. Next, you can expand and collapse groups. So I'm someone who has a lot of lists and a lot of groups, and now you can expand and collapse those. So if you have a lot of stuff and you don't feel like scrolling a bunch, you can keep those things, collapse pretty good. So what you can do is you can tap that there and say expand, and you can collapse it. What a concept. It's amazing. You can also just tap on the title and it'll do the same thing. So if that is something that you're into and you have a lot of stuff, a lot of lists, a lot of groups, this is going to be nice. Another thing that is new, a nice little quality of life thing, is when you're moving stuff. So let's say you are moving an item from one list to another list, or you are adding something to a list or copying, whatever. I was using the iOS menu system for that, but as you have more lists and more groups, it was getting a little unwieldy and was actually causing some performance issues too when it came to scrolling around. So now if I want to move stuff around, I can hit keep here and I just have a nice view just to choose which list I want to move stuff to, or I can log it directly to activity. So just a nice little thing as you're going through stuff. If you go here, you can see this, and again, you can see this little menu that comes up and move it to whatever list you want to move it to or copy it to, that kind of thing. And the last thing is a fun little kind of Easter egg. I mean, most people aren't going to watch this video, so it will be an Easter egg. But if you tap the logo in the middle, and if you like app icons, alternate app icons, you can change it, which is pretty cool. So if there's a specific app icon that you really love and you're sad because you can only see it when you close the app, well, now you can see it when you're in the app too. How nice. So that's all the new stuff. Again, this is potentially boring because it's just settings, but I think a lot of this stuff is really nice. It's really like quality of life stuff. It's these little things in apps that really make it, right? Like they make the experience a lot better. And sometimes a bunch of these little things is a lot better than one big feature. There's also a ton of bug fixes in this one. I did a public beta for this release, and I think I'm going to continue doing public betas. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go to the sofahq.com website for more information on that. But the public betas are great because it gives people an opportunity to test out new things, share feedback, and there are bugs that I would not have even known about had people not participated in the beta and shared that feedback. So thank you to everyone who did that. So that's it. I hope you enjoy this release, and I'm going to be planning a few more of these little quality of life updates. There's I have a bunch of little things on my list to do. And thanks for watching. See ya.